All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Harakah Kodash. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of JMS Great Millstone, and a sincere shalom to Yakim, bringing out this word in diligence and in truth. Hey, now, the title of this lesson, why has China loaded over 100 nuclear ICBMs into silos? Is going directly into the prophecy of the destruction of Babylon, the Great Whore, man, which is a modern day America, right? And this article is from End Time Headlines. And as you see, Lord Willis switched over. It says, why is China loaded over 100 nuclear ICBMs into silos? And ultimately, we understand that this isn't by the power of man, right? It's not man's idea to, gather and to prepare for the oncoming nuclear war. This is ultimately the spirit of Yahweh Bashim Shai upon men to ultimately prepare for war. As the scripture says here, one second. This is coming from the book of Proverbs. It's like here. Right, showing you that it's a man's goings of man, as the scripture says in Proverbs 20 and 24, man's goings of the Lord. How then can he understand his own way? Well, the scripture tells us ultimately that the heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord, and as the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. And we also understand, according to the scriptures, that the Lord, according to Exodus 15 and 3. Matter of fact, I'll grab it just so brothers can see it. It's Exodus 15 verse 3, and it reads, the Lord Yahweh is a man of war. Yahweh is his name, right? So it's the Lord's, great pleasure to ultimately destroy, Babylon the Great. And he's going to use the countries like China. He's going to use the beasts, which are the NATO and the EU nations, because the scriptures even tell us that the beast shall hate the whore. This is Isaiah 13 and 4, and it reads, the noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord Yahweh of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. Let's go into this word mustereth. Right, this is for the word mustereth. H6485 Pekad. It says to muster means to reckon, to visit, to punish, to appoint, right? To appoint, to lay upon as a charge. Let's see, to be visited, to be numbered. Much like Daniel, the 5th chapter, where it says many, many tekel, right? That kingdom has been numbered. Well, ultimately, Yahweh Bashim Shai has an appointed time in which Babylon the Great will be destroyed. So he's going to use these countries like Russia. He's going to use China, and also he's going to use the allies of America to bring forth destruction into this place, right? That's why the scripture tells us in the book of 2nd Esdras 16, all ye that bend the bow. I believe that's like, I believe that's Jeremiah. It says, all ye that bend the bow, shoot at her, spare no arrows, right? So getting into the article, it says, why is China loaded over 100 nuclear ICBMs into silos? Let's read it. It says, a draft Pentagon report reveals that China has likely loaded more than 100 solid fuel DF-31 intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, into 3 silo fields near its border with Mongolia. This marks a significant step in Beijing's rapid nuclear modernization. The DF-31, known as Dongfang or East Wind, NATO designation CSS-10, is a 3-stage solid fuel missile first deployed in 2006. And so we understand from that point on, ultimately, Yahweh Bashim Shai allowed them to beef up their nuclear capabilities. Because if this missile was first, deployed in 2006, and we're damn near 20 years later, so how much more advanced did that nuclear system become, right? The scripture tells us this in the book of Isaiah, the 54th chapter, and I'll start at the 16th verse, and it reads, behold, I've created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, right? And we understand the ancient smith was creating the weapons by way of iron, ultimately heating up that ore until it became orange in a fire, into that smith, beat it upon an anvil and shaped it in a way to where it became a sharp threshing instrument, right? Well, the modern day smith is your scientist, man, right? And what are they doing? You know, they're coming up with the equations and using the elements of uranium 235 and plutonium isotopes in order to create forth a fusion, nuclear fusion, or nuclear fission, which is ultimately those specific isotope ions, you know, meeting one another at high speeds in order to create that nuclear explosion, man. Right? It says, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire and bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I've created the waster to destroy. And that waster is exactly that, the thermonuclear missiles, man. The scriptures call it what? The destroying wind, right? The destroying wind. And ultimately, Yahweh Shema Shah is going to bring forth the destroying wind, not only to Babylon the Great, but to various nations around the world. Though we understand the earth abideth forever, as the scripture tells us, this place is going to be left forth as a desolate wilderness. Hence, when we go into the book of Ecclesiastes, it tells us the land was as the Garden of Eden before them, right? And after them, a desolate wilderness, signifying that the Lord is going to leave this place as a memorial, much like as he did unto Sodom and Gomorrah, right? A place left only for dwelling desert creatures, man. This is what is going to come down to, right? Whether you believe it or not, this is the fate of Babylon the Great, man, right? So as we continue, because a lot of this information that we're getting, matter of fact, I want to grab this, right? Because it's not just China. Let's go. Nuclear start ending February. And I'm going to keep bringing this information out, man. February 5th. Right? I'm going to keep bringing this information out because we understand, as we read in Isaiah, oops, here we go. Going back into that word mustard. As we go back into Isaiah 13, I'm going to read it again. Right? Verse 4, it says, the noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. Right? So when we go back to this article now, it says it has variants including DF31, DF31A, DF31AG, with an estimated range of 4,350 to 7,270 miles, and capable of carrying a single 500 kilogram warhead, yielding 200 to 300 kilotons. And now 500 kilograms, they just multiply 500 by 2.2. So you have a little almost over you know, because that'd be 1,000 pounds. So just say 1,200 pounds, 1,200 plus some change, man. Let me see real quick. 2.2. Yep, almost 1,200 pounds. Warhead of power, man. Right? So it says the report assesses China's nuclear warhead stockpile at just over 600 in 2024. Now, one thing, I went to ChatGPT to get this information, right? Now this is the last nuclear deal or the last nuclear treaty that's been in effect, and it actually expires next year, February 5th, man. Right? Showing you that the Lord is ultimately he's going to be rousing up things as we get closer and closer into the end of days, man. And with this nuclear treaty, there hasn't even been talks of this nuclear treaty, you know, basically coming back into a new signing, man. Right? So it started in, I believe, 1980 something or something along those lines. But it started with three separate START treaties, you know. It was the START 1, START 2, and then ultimately the new START is the last one, right? START stands for Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. It expires February 5th, 2026. Unless replaced or extended again, it expires completely on that date. So they're literally 2 months out, right? It says the new START limits and verifies the world's two largest nuclear arsenals. So ultimately, it's between Russia and US. But we understand China is the third nuclear power upon the earth, right? It says the new START limits and verifies the world's two largest nuclear arsenals, 100, it's like 1,550 deployed strategic nuclear warheads per county, 700 deployed delivery systems that includes the ICBMs. It says in 800 total launchers, right? These are the the limits due to this treaty for both sides. It says it also includes on-site inspections, data exchanges, and notifications. Now we also understand that the what do you call it, the INF treaty, right, between Iran and the US was basically disannulled. First America pulled out, and then they blamed Iran for pulling out after them, and that's just how the devil gets down. But nevertheless, that's done with, right? So this is the last one. This is the last treaty that's in effect, man. Right? It says current situations and why it matters now. The treaty was extended once in 2021 for 5 years, which will end next year. It says in 2023, Russia announced it was suspending participation, not formally withdrawing, and inspection and data exchanges have largely stopped. The U.S. says it's remained compliant but cannot verify Russian compliance. And when the U.S. says they remain compliant, that actually means they're breaking the rules. They're just not reporting on it, right? Because here it was during the INF, they said that Iran was essentially mining over the capacity for uranium 235, and they were doing the same shit, man. So this is how this devil gets down, man. Right? That's why the scripture tells us never to trust thine enemy, because even these older, or even these other Edomite nations and heathen nations, when it comes to war and understanding the nature of Esau, they know that this devil don't play fair, man. Right? So they know how to hide things and to put things out of sight, just so they could try to get a heads up or arms up in the race, man. It says the new start expires on February 5th, 2026. It says no legal limits on U.S. or Russian strategic nuclear weapons for the first time since 1972, right? It's increased risk of arms racing, miscalculation, escalation during crisis, Slakia. It says other nuclear states, China, are not bound by this treaty at all. And this is why you see articles like this. China loading over 100 nuclear ICBMs into silos. They're not bound by those same uh, um uh basically treaties, man. Which means what? They ultimately have a range in order to just ball out in terms of increasing nuclear capabilities, right? And China is going to be a nation that shoots at this place, man. This is just a fact, right? It says the report assesses China's nuclear warhead stockpile at just over 600 in 2024. And one thing you have to remember about nuclear war, no side is going to reveal their arm completely, man. So them just saying over 600, it could be over 1,000, man. But they're not going to tell you. Why would you let your competition know exactly what you're dealing with, right? It says with 276 intercontinental range, but projects over 1,000 by 2030, despite a slower recent production rate. It says the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist notes that over the past 5 years, China has significantly expanded its ongoing nuclear modernization program by fielding more types and greater numbers of nuclear weapons than ever before. Right, and this is ultimately spoken of in the scriptures in the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter. So I want to grab that really quick. This is Joel 2, but I'm gonna go to Joel 3, and this is verse 10. Matter of fact, I'm gonna start at 9, and it reads, "Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles: Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong." Right, and China was previously seen, as a weak nation, because what? A lot of their funding, that was geared towards agriculture, they switched it, into what? Into war, man. To They switched their funding towards military purposes, man. Right, and it's not just China. Even when you look at the nations in Ezekiel the 38th chapter, whom Russia is going to be a guard to, hey, they've also dedicated funds that were once for farming into their nuclear programs or into their military programs, man. This is just what it is. Every nation senses that the end is not. So everybody is on the brink of, or not on the brink. Everybody is choosing sides, right? It's either you're allied with America now, hence NATO and the EU, but we understand according to prophecy that they're going to switch and ultimately a blast on the whore, right? And then you have what? Russia. You got China. You got India. You see what's going on in Venezuela right now. Russia just sent forth the diplomats, or they went into Venezuela and they took out the families of the diplomats to basically put them under protection from America. And America's doing what? Constantly grabbing forth those oil tankers from there. That's a power play on both sides, because Russia also has weapons in Venezuela, man. As America's over there about to pillage, well, Russia has weapons, and that what brings weapons closer into the borders of America, right? So everything is coming out, man. Everything is coming out, and we understand this is ultimately the end all be all thermonuclear destruction. And we have prophecies that have to unfold before this, but we still have to report because this is going to be the greatest destruction which was ever upon earth. Hence, the second death that the scriptures call it, man. Right? So, I want to go into, matter of fact, let's go into the book of Revelation. This Revelation 9. I'm going to start here at the 16th verse. And it reads, "And the number of the army of the horsemen," in the scriptures, it's not speaking about physical horses. How do we know? Well, when we go into the book of Joel, the second chapter, and I'll start here at the top. It says, "Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Yahweh cometh, for it is nigh at hand." And this is speaking about the day of doom, right? It says, "A day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness. As the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong, there hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations." Right? Because when we go into the book of Isaiah, I believe it's Isaiah 9. Matter of fact, let's just grab it. A lot of precepts lined up. But here we go. This Isaiah 9:5, right? It says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise." When you take a look at the ancient battles, the ancient wars, it was done with what? Men in chain armor, men with shields and bucklers and swords and maces and all these different weaponries, right? Arrows and catapults and trebuchets, right? It says, "For every battle of the warriors with confused noise and garments rolled in blood." You know, it took man-to-man combat. You know, who's ever the best warrior on the field and whoever has the best strategic placements, they ultimately win the war, right? So it says, "For every battle of the warriors with confused noise and garments rolled in blood," right? Men's hands had to get dirty. It says, "But this," right? Speaking of what? A new technological advancement age. It says, "But this shall be with burning and fuel of fire." Because what? Those smiths that blow up the coals in the fire, man. Meaning what? It's not hand-to-hand combat anymore. You know, though you still have ground troops, the bulk of destruction is going to be done, from you know, countries being able to just press a button, right? It says, "But this shall be with burning and fuel of fire." So to go back to the book of Joel, the second chapter, so that we could lead back into Revelation 9, the scripture tells us, this is verse 2, slack it. Verse 3. It says, "A fire devoureth before them," right? "And behind them a flame burneth." So what is it speaking about? It's still speaking about the thermonuclear destruction, right? It's speaking about the thermonukes, the ICBMs. It says, "A fire devoureth before them," because we understand the power of the nuclear warhead is literally in the head, right? We also understand that what the behind them, that a flame burneth, is just a fuel used to basically, what's the word? It start with a P. I can't think of the word, but it projects. It projects the missiles over here, man. It says, "The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness." Speaking of what the destruction that is going to cause, yea, and nothing shall escape them, right? Because there's no running from this, man. The only way out of this, or to escape thermonuclear destruction, is ultimately to be caught up by the chariots, man, of Yahweh Bashim Shai. That's why Isaiah 26:20 says what it says. Come now, my people, enter down into thy chambers, and to the indignation be overpassed. That indignation is the righteous anger and the fire of Yahweh Bashim Shai. So I'll get 1 second. This is verse 4. It says, "The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses," which is representative of power, right? It says, "And as horsemen, so shall they run." So when we go back into the book of Revelation, the 9th chapter, and it speaks about those horsemen, it's not speaking about men. It's speaking about those same missiles, right? It says in the number 16, "And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000,000," right? And I heard the number of them. Matter of fact, let's go here. See what it's saying in NLT. 200,000,000. So that's what? 200 million, right? 200 million mounted troops, which are ultimately the missiles. It's not men. It's the missiles, the warheads, man. Yeah, I want to keep reading, see what it's saying in NLT. It says 17. It says, "And in my vision I saw the horses and the riders sitting on them. The riders wore armor that was fiery red and dark blue and yellow, The horses had heads like lions, representing the fierceness of the missiles, the power, right? As we understand in the scriptures say they do hurt. Well, the power of a lion is within that bite force, right? That's where it strikes. That's where it attacks, right? So much like a physical lion, well, the physical hurt that's going to come from the thermonuclear missiles is in that explosion, right? The power that it produces, that destroying wind. It says the horses had heads like lions, and fire and smoke and burning sulfur, right? And it's beautiful that the scripture says what? Burning sulfur, because it mimics what? The destruction that happened in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Because that's what the Lord likens it to. It says, and burning sulfur billowed from their mouths. 1/3 of all the people on earth were killed by these three plagues, by the fire and smoke and burning sulfur that came from the mouth of the horses. Their power was in their mouths and in their tails, for their tails had heads like snakes, with the power to injure people, right? Hence, the scriptures telling us about the eyes and the tongues consuming in the holes, right, of the individuals that will ultimately be destroyed. So when we go back here into the article, it tells us the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist notes that over the past 5 years, China has significantly expanded its ongoing nuclear modernization program by fielding more types and greater numbers of nuclear weapons than ever before. It adds, analyzing and estimating China's nuclear forces is a challenging endeavor, particularly given the relative lack of state originating data and the tight control of messaging surrounding the country's nuclear arsenal and doctrine. Ultimately saying that China is hiding what they're doing very well, right? And the US aren't able to actually, infiltrate like they want to see what China has been building, what their capabilities are. That's all that's saying. They haven't been able to snoop well enough to peep what China has been creating, but they understand that China is working with Russia, right? They understand that the enemies of the enemies are ultimately the friends, right? China looks at themselves as a superpower as well, just as Russia does. They both think they have next, right? But as long as they could take the whore out, they're gonna be happy, right? Because it moves them up a spot in the totem pole. Though neither of these nations, these foolish nations, they don't understand that none of them is gonna have next. Ultimately, Yahweh and Yahweh Shai will be ruling in the kingdom to come, right? Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So when we go back here, just to go deeper into the missiles, the nukes, this is continuing in the book of Joel 2. This is verse 5. It says, like the noise of the chariots on the tops of mountains shall they leap, right? Like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. And that's what it likens the formation of the missiles being shot into this place as, a battle array. Hey, when you watch the movies, you always see like, oh, it'll be however many nukes in the air flying, right? They're all in the formation, right? That's that battle array. It says, before their face, the people shall be much pain. Here it is when the nukes begin to be shut off to the ends of the world. And you're going to have alarms all across Babylon going off. Oh, this is not a drill, so forth and so on. People are going to be looking into the sky, knowing that, hey, once they're shot off, it's no turning back. No missile defense is going to stop them. And the scripture tells you that in the book of Joel as we continue. It says, before their face, the people shall be much pain. All faces shall gather blackness, right? They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like the men of war, and they shall march everyone on his ways, and they shall not break their ranks. Meaning what? They're not going to bump into each other. One nuke ain't going to explode into the air and cause the others to blow up. No, this is not a Marvel movie, man. This is going to be reality. It says, neither shall one thrust another, right? Bump. It says, they shall walk everyone in this path, because every ICBM, every missile, has a GPS, a longitude and latitude set for it. And ultimately, Yahweh Shemal Shai is 100% accurate, and its precision is out of this world, right? So every missile has its path, right? They all take that, that parabolic type of trajectory into hitting its exact point. It says, and when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. 9. It says, they shall run to and fro in the city. They shall run upon the wall. They shall climb up upon the houses. They shall enter in at the windows like a thief, right? The earth shall quake before them. The scripture tells you the earth shall move to and fro like a drunkard when these nukes hit, right? Due to that power. It says, the heavens shall tremble, the sun and moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining, right? Due to the smoke clouds. The scriptures talk about this place, the prophet seeing forth the nukes hitting as a scroll, or it speaks about the mushroom cloud. So like heavens rolled together as a scroll, right? Now, to bring out some more precepts, I have this in the book of, let's close this one out. Let's close this one out. It's coming from the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah 51, and I'll start here at 6. 1 second, grab me some water really quick. It's Jeremiah 51 and 6, and it reads, Flee ye out of the midst of Babylon, and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of Yahweh's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense. Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, right? That made all the earth drunken. From what? Her philosophies, the image of the beast, right? It says the nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. They're seeing that all the ways in which Esau, Edom has taught them has ultimately, destroyed their moral or their morality, has destroyed their social structure, and has destroyed their dynamics. In every way, man. It says, therefore the nations are mad, right? They see that the media has been used forth as a weapon against these other countries, against themselves, right? So the nations are seeing the real, and on top of that, they're looking at the fact that how, hey, the small hats, right, the JOOs have America in their back pocket, right? And all these countries know that America's the muscle, and they're protecting those people. So they see all the wickedness being done by Babylon protecting them. That's making them mad too. This is 8. It says, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her take balm for her pain? If so be she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go everyone into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. Yahweh hath brought forth our righteousness. Come, and let us declare in Zion the work of our power, Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai. 11, and it reads, make bright the arrows. Matter of fact, I gotta grab this in the book of 2nd Esdras. This is 2nd Esdras 15. So like, oops. 2nd Esdras 16. Yeah. The 2nd Esdras 16, I'm gonna start here at 6:15. It says 4:12, 13. It says, for strong is his right hand that bendeth the bow, his arrows that he shooteth are sharp. Right now, this isn't speaking about the arrow that's coming right out of a bow and arrow, the physical weapon. It's speaking about the thermonuclear destruction, right? Here it is. The prophets could only describe, the visions they seen by the words and the objects that existed in their time. There was no such thing as a nuclear missile in the time of Ezra, right? But what he seen was them coming out of those same silos that China just spoke about, right, in this article, and they being shot to what? The ends of the earth or the ends of the world. No actual arrow can do that, man. Hey, no actual arrow shooting from state to state. How much from country to country, right? It says, for strong is his right hand that bent the bow. His arrows that he shooteth are sharp, and shall not miss when they begin to be shot into the ends of the world. Behold, the plagues are sent and shall not return again until they come upon the earth. 15. So like, the fire is kindled and shall not be put out till it consume the foundation of the earth. Right? And that's that destroying wind again. It says, like as an arrow which is shot of a mighty archer returneth not backward, even so the plagues that shall be sent upon the earth shall not return again. So when we go back into the book of Jeremiah, the 51st chapter, and it speaks about where was I? 51. Make bright the arrows. It's the same ICBM, same nuclear missiles. It says, make bright the arrows, gather the shields. Yahweh hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes, going back to Russia, right? For his device is against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance of his temple. So this is what it is, man. This is what it is. Ultimately, Yahweh Shema Shai has a fiery indignation against this place, and he's going to allow these nations to shoot upon it. Hence Revelation 18 chapter. And I'll get to the point. 18 and 3, right? It says, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And we just read that in Jeremiah 51, right? And the kings of the earth that have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. So when we continue, it tells us, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Right now, we understand that's not physically leaving Babylon the Great. Um, well, actually, Salakia. Matter of fact, I gotta grab this because this is talking about being caught up. Is it 26? I'll hold this right because Micah 2:10 tells you to arise and depart, for this is not your rest. And that's not speaking of physically leaving, but we understand the elect will actually be caught up. So Salakia. It says, where was that at? 4. It says, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and Yahweh hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. And the cup which she had filled, filled to her double. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her, for she saith in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord power Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, who judgeth her. So that's exactly what's going to occur for Babylon the Great, man. Fire. And it's ultimately the Lord judging her, man. Judging this place. And as far as the elect, I quoted this scripture. It's coming from Isaiah 26:20. Because the Lord is going to allow us to escape this fire, man, and not be partakers, as the 2/3 of the nation of Israel will. Isaiah 26:20. Come, my people, enter down to thy chambers. That chamber is that secret place, man. And ultimately, it's what? Being caught up into the chariot, to avoid being a partaker of the second death. It says, and shut thy doors about thee, much like how Noah, the seal of the ark of Noah, was what? It's like the door of the ark of Noah was sealed off by Yahweh, man. Well, the same thing is going to occur. Those doors are going to hide the elect from what? From receiving that judgment as the 2/3 and the rest of these people in America. It says, hide thyself as it were a little moment until the indignation, that fiery anger, the power, that fire, thermonuclear fire, be overpassed, the indignation. So that's the point, man. And what's happening is China is getting ready for this moment. And the closer and closer we get to the end, you're going to hear of more nations, loading up their nuclear ICBMs into silos, because it's all preparing for war. It's all preparing for the great and dreadful day of thermonuclear destruction. So that's the point, not to make the lesson too lengthy, but to get all the meat off the bones as to why China is loading, because ultimately Yahweh Shema Shai is furthering that spirit of war within the air, man, which means what? This has to come to pass. The Most High is not a man that he should lie. So that's the point. Lord willing, the lesson was edifying unto the body. I want to give all praise, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Harakah Kodash. A double honors unto the apostles and elders of JMS Great Millstone, and a sincere shalom to Yakim, bringing out this word in diligence and in truth. Shalom.